The Guardians, Path of Ascension, by Bruce R.F. Chapter 9, No Pain, No Gain. Nighttime in Nevada can be chilly. With the sun almost set and no other shelter in sight, the gang moves into the belly of the cave. Brr. Jasra shivers, taking a seat on a rocky slab to avoid the damp ground. I'm not so sure about this, she complains, while rubbing her sides to keep warm. It's not that bad, Seldin claims. You're not cold? She seems surprised, but he shakes his head as he joins her on the rock, offering a warm arm, while Simon and the others commune at the entrance, catching up on the past year. It's nice to have him here, she thinks, hiding her smile from Seldin's piercing eyes, which shimmer like sapphires in the fading light. Likewise, Seldin stares into her emeralds, a lush green that matches her attire, while contrasting the silky sheen of her auburn hair. He's comfortable too, enjoying the pleasantness of their casual embrace, and there's a subtle shift in the ether as their auras overlap, like two soap bubbles merging into one. Don't get too comfortable, Simon says in an abrupt tone. Seldin and Jasra snap their gaze to him in the urgency of the moment. She's cold, Seldin replies, before quickly standing and casting a beam of energy to a heap of stalactite hanging from the ceiling. It glows orange, bestowing radiant hues throughout the cavern, and a soothing field of heat for everyone in need. He then turns, breaking his locked eyes from Simon, before heading outside. The chilly air is soothing on his skin. Although he may have evolved beyond pain, he is not without sensation. It calms him in the moment, for he staggers inward, feeling that nagging tug on the strings of his heart. Seldin had been calloused all those years growing up, as he trained and followed his nature, all the while watching his friends experience another, more foreign way of life. For a moment, he feels the weight of his thoughts, as they burden him with a hollow temptation. Had he missed out? No, he bellows a lofty sigh. There's no room in my life for that, he tells himself, then glances up at the paleness of the moon. Another thought comes to him, one that brings a smile to his face. I could. He begins to crouch, as if cocking the springs of his legs. Hey, Sci, what happened in there? Leon shouts. Righting himself, Seldin turns to face his younger friend, and his student, who trails behind. Nothing, he replies. Oh, well, those two are sucking face now anyway. Up for a match? I've been eager to test myself, Leon admits. Turning his eyes back to the moon, Seldin ponders the idea. Does he really want to fight? He turns back. 2v1 or free-for-all? He looks to them. A strange sort of smile hits Almir's face. Do you really think you can take us both? He asks with a sudden stroke of brashness. Leon smirks at him and then glances to Seldin, who steps back, initiating the formation of a triangle, with each combatant at the edge of their zone. The cool air whips around them, as neither party wishes to give away a thing. The energies between them are calm, with the moonlight overhead setting the stage. Are you going to make a move, Sci? Almir looks to Seldin. With his senses active, Seldin breaks his stare from Leon as he glances to Almir. Your call. Leon drops down, planting his hands to the dirt. The earth beneath Seldin erupts, smashing him with an angular pillar to the chest before he can react. If breath mattered, it would have knocked his wind out. Still, he's stunned in the moment as Leon moves to rush in, but Almir already has, strafing around the newly formed plateau to engage his foe from behind. Seldin pushes off, jumping into a backflip to gain sight and the height advantage. From there, he thrusts himself downward, spearing his apprentice's apprentice in the back of the neck with an elbow that plants him face first in the dirt. Leon then appears beside Seldin, coming out of a vaporous form, then shifting into a watery body that absorbs his mentor's punches like little splashes, no more intrusive than fighting a wave. To Seldin, it feels like he's hitting nothing. The force of his blows goes straight through. The leftover momentum sets him off balance, giving Leon the advantage as he strikes back, changing his fist to stone just as he makes contact, then shifts to water again. Leon's arm then comes around as if to clothesline him, but as the arm strikes, the aquatic matter rapidly chills, freezing Seldin's arms as he blocks. Then quickly Leon follows up, transitioning from water to vapor, before darting behind him and morphing into a body of flame to torch him with each strike. Unable to block him, Seldin does what he can to avoid the attacks. It isn't that difficult really, for although Leon can shift quickly, his movements are slow, and worse, predictable. Soon, Seldin is able to derive a pattern. He waits, knowing Leon will change to something solid just before impact. There it is. His mind detects the coalescing of ether within Leon's body as he readies to counter. Out of the darkness, the heel of a boot catches Seldin's jaw, slamming him into the ground. "Ah!" Seldin groans, coming out of a rough landing that scrapes him as he skids. "Welcome back," Seldin greets Almir, who charges in for a follow-up. "I thought you were down for the count," he says, while dodging and countering Almir effortlessly until Leon catches up. The battle becomes extremely dynamic, with the way Almir and Leon play off each other's moves. It's like an intricate dance, a tango of 2 on 1. Then all of a sudden, a streak of light comes from overhead. "What the hell is that?" Almir shouts, pointing at the soaring orb.
"It's a Foo Fighter,"
Leon exclaims with eyes wide. Seldin looks too. "What?" Almir gasps.
"You know, UFOs, alien spacecraft,"
Leon responds, without breaking his gaze. "Oh dear God," Seldin groans loudly. "That's not what it means. Unidentified. In other words, we have no idea what it is. Until then, we have to assume it's man-made," he scolds. "You're the one out here looking for aliens," Almir retorts. "True, but that doesn't mean we can jump to conclusions," he replies.
"What do you think it is, Sci?"
Leon asks. "I don't know, but I'm gonna find out." With that, Seldin is gone before the others can reply. They stand there, looking at the orb of light streaking across the sky, and the subtle wake of energy that Seldin leaves behind. "Wow, he is fast!" Almir's jaw drops.
"Yep,"
Leon replies. "Be honest, was he just toying with us?" Leon glances back, then offers only a chuckle and a shake of his head in reply, before turning toward the cave. Seldin flies at high speed, his eyes locked onto whatever is floating over the mountain range. Scanning the object with his senses, he attunes to it. It's not a plane, that's for sure. It's round, almost spherical. He can detect some sort of metallic alloy, which seems oddly familiar, and traces of organic matter fused into the hull. The vehicle measures only a few meters across, rather small, he thinks, yet the aura of the vessel is bright in his mind's eye, giving off a very powerful energy field that seemingly twists space, but he can't see beyond that. There's too much distortion. Even though he can't sense any life aboard, the craft responds to his approach. It begins to rotate, as if it had a discernible forward section, before speeding off into the night sky. The disruption of space between the object and its destination leaves a wake of emptiness, a pocket of nothing, and for a moment, Seldin finds himself adrift, until hitting normal air, able to pursue again. The object makes abrupt stops, and sharp turns at right angles, the classics of ufology. Yet no matter where it goes, or what maneuvers it tries, Seldin is there, taking turns and changing speed just as quickly, until it stops. Like before, it orients itself to face him. Much closer now, Seldin can see structural details within the egg-shaped hull, the perforations in the dark gray, brushed metal surface, and the organic, almost carapace-like features embedded in the material. With no obvious signs of entry, Seldin wonders just how to access it. There are no doors or windows to speak of, at least none that he can see. Easing up on it, he extends a hand. Singe! It fries his palm in contact, and instinctively he pulls away before attempting a second try. The vehicle then speeds off again, and in turn, Seldin takes flight. He follows it for a time before it stops once again. A fluctuation in the gravity field alerts his senses, as the energy surrounding the craft quickly collects and is immediately discharged in his direction. Seldin swats, deflecting the blast with his right hand, and the ship zooms off. Seldin stays on it, even as it weaves dangerously close to the mountains, until a military base enters his view. He stops, not wanting to trigger any alarms. There's no telling how they'd respond to his presence, though he could venture a guess. Making a note of the craft's distinct energy signature, Seldin turns about and speeds back to camp. "Man, that was intense," he says aloud. "I can't believe what I just saw. I can't wait to tell everyone," he rambles to himself. At his current pace, it only takes him a few minutes to get back to the cave, and he hits the ground with hardly a thud, then rushes inside. "Hey guys, guess what Jasra and Simon are curled up together, while Leon and Almir sleep in opposite corners of the cave. He sighs, disappointed, and then heads back outside. Out under the paleness of the celestial grace, he rests there, taking in the moment with the light on his face, while closing his eyes and watching the soft bluish-white hues pierce through. He then looks up, thinking back to an earlier idea. "I don't need to breathe, right?" he ponders. Lowering himself into a crouching stance, he cocks his legs, and boom! He springs off, heading straight for the moon. He's sure he can do it, he's positive. Without the frailties of his human needs to hold him back, it should be a walk in the park. Only 62 miles to space. At Mach 2, he should hit that mark in about 3 minutes. The energy that expels from his being pushes him up like a rocket. Soon, he hits the cloud banks, and then shortly after, he's above them. As his altitude increases, he begins to feel a swell in his body, as the surrounding atmosphere grows thinner and thinner, applying less and less pressure upon him. With the darkness of space in his view, he begins to wobble, for at that height, he feels unsteady, unsure of what to root to. The Earth is so far away, yet the moon is farther still. His balance begins to falter, and he teeters back toward the Earth. Whoa! He shouts. He's falling fast, descending rapidly as the ground rushes up at over 100 miles an hour to meet him. Struggling to orient himself, he works quickly to straighten out his tumble, before he and the ground become good friends. He knows the math. Even at terminal velocity, he only has a few minutes. Closing his eyes to calm his mind, he feels out the ley lines of the Earth's magnetic field, and like a compass, he aligns himself appropriately, before soaring to the moon once again. Confident he doesn't need oxygen, he slows down for nothing and punches through the atmosphere as he enters the innermost edges of outer space. Yes! He exclaims excitedly, though not hearing a sound in the void as he mouths the words. He pushes himself farther, feeling out the rim of the Van Allen radiation belt. At first, the cold touch of space slows his movements, while the lack of pressure strains his body. Almost there, he says to himself. Outer space, here I go. Ah! Seldin howls, for outside the Earth's magnetic field, there's nothing to save him from the sun. Even at 93 million miles away, he's naked to its rays. He must have overlooked how defenseless he'd be to it. Pain or not, he can't go on if he's destroyed. In a panic, he pushes himself back. Right then, the mother of all Catch-22s hits him as he begins to burn on re-entry. Pushing energy to his aura, he does what he can to deflect the damage from all sides. Then, like a shooting star, a human-shaped ball of fire slams into the ground at full force. Charred and broken, Seldin gasps as his bones crackle and pop under the blackness of his seared skin. Putting in the effort to sit up, he crumbles back to the ground. His body is just too damaged, and his power is gone from re-entry. Physically, it doesn't hurt, not even a bit. He just can't move. There aren't enough muscles left to function, and hardly any energy remaining to stay conscious. For a while, he drifts in and out, napping for a few minutes here and there. Seldin hasn't felt this weak since... Lucy. He kicks himself awake and calls to her before blacking out once again. Back in the cave, there's a rustling in a black bag. Her link to him is staggered, for his signal is low. A sense of concern fills her stem. She kneads nervously at the bottom of the bag with her roots as she fiddles with the double zipper. Snaking a vine through, she opens the pouch just enough to get herself out. Once freed, she scurries, following his signal to just outside the cave. But why so weak? The nurturing instincts rush a gauntlet of her curiosity. Her roots punch into the soft soil as she crawls the 9 meters from the opening of the cave to the outer hill of the crater, and then to the center, where she feels him most. His skin is like leather, yet it peels like burnt chicken as she embeds her roots, burrowing into the center of his chest and plugging into his chakras. Although there isn't much light from the moon, she opens wide, fanning her petals to absorb what she can. The rest she pulls from the earth, drawing the essence away from the surrounding foliage, which withers as she feeds him. Seldin gasps as his heart begins to beat, and his lungs begin to function. His organs, vestigial as they are, start to regrow as muscle and skin repopulate his body. Suddenly, his eyes open as he awakens, feeling the essence of himself filling out the suit of his flesh. Clenching a fist before his eyes to test his strength, Seldin sits up and greets Lucy with a gentle caress that flaps her petals. She then uproots herself and repositions to the small of his back, where she prefers to be. He then looks himself over to make sure everything's where it should be, before standing up to brush the dirt and grit from the bareness of his newly formed exterior. He is of the proper height, proper weight, and his lineage seems appropriate. The only things lacking now are his clothes. It's a shame those don't grow back. He ponders the idea before glancing over his shoulder to Lucy. Cover, he says, and like she's done so many times before, she wraps him in herself. Scanning the concave crater as he looks upward, he affixes his attention to the moon. A deep inhale then fills his lungs as he circulates the ether within his core. The earth seems to shake beneath his feet as the energy of his aura pushes against the bowl-shaped depression, stirring up the loose soil. Let's do this. Boom! There's an immense bang that cracks the air from his sudden jump to hypersonic speed. In less than 30 seconds he hits space, then outer space, several thousand miles above the Earth and beyond the sanctity of its magnetosphere. Supercharged by the Malnar, Seldin pushes on as the flower enthusiastically drinks up the raw radiation from the sun, fueling his aura and protecting him from the harmful rays, while boosting his speed to a whole new magnitude. Determined to hit his mark, Seldin doesn't stop to admire the scenery. He trucks forward, aiming straight for the Sea of Tranquility. At a rate of over 64,000 miles per hour, it takes him just under 4 hours to enter lunar gravity. Turning about, Seldin floors it hard to slow his descent as he makes a new, though small, crater. Touching down, he drops into a crouch to absorb some of the impact. Able to rest for a moment, he relishes in the experience. With a hand, he scoops up the sharp, fluffy dirt, admires it, and then stands to take in the awe and wonder. A black backdrop with a sparkling blue marble fills the sky. It almost brings him a tear that he manages to hold back, while thinking upon those famous words. One giant leap, he utters with a wide smile, staring back at the earth. A glance to the sun shows its brightness, and then he looks over the lunar landscape. It's a different world entirely, with its own unique features, a topology so unlike Earth, yet a familiar sense all around. His first step is a doozy, throwing him horribly off balance in the weak gravity. He tumbles forward, then quickly rearward as he overcorrects himself, stumbling around for a moment or two, before using his energy to push himself down and keep his feet planted. For a time, he investigates the lunar landscape, particularly the landing site of Apollo 11. The footprints of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are still present, forever imprinted in the moon's weather-free surface. Several pieces of survey equipment remain as well, including the infamous lunar buggy. An idea swims in his head as a delighted chuckle escapes his lips, and he decides to trek over to it. The vehicle leaves much to be desired, resembling a slightly more durable golf cart, equipped with a T-shaped steering console and an instrument panel that does whatnot. There are other controls and devices too, yet what Seldin is most interested in is, how do you make it go? He questions curiously, examining the thing. The onboard batteries appear to be drained, and unfortunately, there are no solar panels in sight. Oh well, he hops on. I'll just do this. He focuses, taking a page out of Simon's book and channeling ether directly into the electronic motors. Zoom! It takes off, rolling over the unsteady terrain like an ATV on a motocross track. Riding the buggy in the lack of wind, he gapes with a wide grin as he plays childishly in the weak gravity. Sharp turns round out, and donuts take a while, but neither twist nor turn goes unsavored. He hits a dune at a harsh angle, and the buggy rolls. Its momentum carries it through the air, and Seldin's head just manages to clear the ground as the wheels touch down and the rover skids to a halt. Awesome! He expresses in the thrill. Fun like this is rare. In fact, he hasn't had this much of a good time in a long time. Oh man, if only Simon could. He stops to a thought that brings his mind to a halt. Come on, Lucy. It's time to go. Getting off the rover, he stands and stares at the earth. A glare of light from his right draws his attention to the sun beaming down upon him. Unveil, he says, but Lucy doesn't want to. She ignores his command. Unveil, I said. Come on, unveil. The stubborn thing tightens up in protest. Lucy, I have to learn to defend myself out here. How else am I supposed to protect all life if I can't travel amongst the stars? There are worlds out there that need me. Now unveil. I'll be all right, he insists. And as he commands, his floral friend peels back the leafy covering of the helmet, exposing Seldin to the sun's mercy. The lack of atmosphere and the weak magnetic field leaves him little protection. Unshielded from the cosmic rays, his flesh begins to sear, and immediately Lucy closes up to protect him. No, he urges. Unveil. I'll be fine. Unveil, Seldin insists. Lucy uncoils just as asked, taking her retreat to the small of his back. Once again, his body begins to char, as skin, blood, and tissue are scorched away in the direct sunlight. Dropping to his knees, Seldin forces energy from his core to project a shield of ether. Deflecting air at high speeds is nothing compared to this. The feedback is overwhelming. Still, he fights against it, healing himself as quickly as the sun's radiation blasts his work away. Powering to his max, he feels his body straining, overwhelmed by the turbulence of the ether flowing through him. Ah! He grunts loudly, with a sound that hardly reverberates over the lunar terrain as he pushes himself to his feet. As he stands against the turmoil, laughter escapes his lips, for he's done it. The field is solid. His wounds are healing. Seldin Gardain is standing on the moon, ungarnished, unchained, in the full light of the sun. He stares at himself, looking over and marveling at his own accomplishment. Congratulations. An accented voice chimes from behind, permeating his mind. Turning quickly, Seldin's eyes lock onto the darkly dressed hooded figure. Who are you? He asks, pulling down the hood of his coat to reveal his dead flesh-looking face and bald head. The man answers, I am Tillman, the Guardian of Death. There is no Guardian of Death, Seldin retorts, and Tillman chuckles loudly. Such arrogance. There once was a guardian for every living world. You and I serve as balance. The cycle of life and death, he states. Seldin's eyes trail down as he rationalizes what's been said. There are others, he asks. Tillman nods. Then Seldin looks to him. If what you say is true, then where are they? Why remain hidden all these years, when we could have... Tillman shakes his head. It's the trial of every guardian to ascend naturally, to evolve beyond the needs of the physical body, and become one with the universe. It's what solidifies your role as guardian. If I were to kick your soul from the flesh, it wouldn't fade into nothingness like so many others, he explains. So, we're immortal then? Seldin inquires. Tillman nods. In time, but not indestructible. To tell you the truth, Sai, there are very few of us left. Our enemies have found ways to destroy us. He sighs, while looking out into the blackness of space. Are you serious about raiding Area 51? Tillman asks. Seldin looks down for a second. Should I not? He asks. Tillman shrugs. It doesn't matter. Your friends have yet to ascend. Perhaps it'll be good for them. But don't spend too much time goofing off. The universe is vast, and it does need us, he says. With that, Seldin turns toward Earth as he pushes off. Oh, and Sai, Tillman calls back, and Seldin turns, touching down once again. There are 4 guardians crucial to the system. Life, death, dimension, and time. If you must save someone, make it one of them. Jasra clenches her eyes shut, refusing the light of morning, as it creeps its way into the cave. She makes a face, then stubbornly rolls over. A gentle kiss then nestles her forehead to ease her transition. "Wake up, sweetie," Simon says softly, nudging his head to hers.
Is it morning already?"
she asks. "Indeed," he answers, as she sits up to look about the cave. Everyone else is already outside. "Come on," Simon tugs at her arm. Jasra grabs her boots, brushes the sand from her socks, then laces up before accompanying her escort. Her mind fixates on Seldin, not seeing him when she awoke, but her thoughts quickly dissipate at the onset of hunger, with a grumbling of her stomach. As they make their way out to the surface, Simon's eyes grow wide, for he hasn't ventured out yet either, nor seen the enormous hole in the ground. "Holy shit!" he exclaims, walking up to it. Jasra isn't surprised. In fact, the knowing little snicker she lets out as her eyes deviate to Seldin is more of an anecdotal expression for the dreams she had throughout the night, which might explain her morning condition. "Eat up," Seldin points to a bountiful assortment laid out on a blanket, like a picnic in the dried, grassy field.
"It's good, too,"
Leon mutters, stuffing his face alongside his younger friend. "Where'd all this come from, and what the hell happened?" Simon questions. Seldin glances away, breaking from the eye contact that Jasra's been laying on. "Well, I needed a change of clothes, so I figured while I was out, I'd stop and pick up a few things to get the day moving. There aren't any restaurants nearby, so—" "And the big-ass hole?" Simon points. "Rough landing." Seldin clears his throat, and again Jasra snickers. Simon looks to her, slightly confused, before he and she dig in. "I've been surveying the land," Seldin says. "The base is 70 miles that way." He points northwest, and it's guarded by frequent patrols that happen every—
"Hey, did you tell him about the spaceship?"
Leon blurts out. Simon and Jasra look up. "Spaceship?" "There was an unidentified object hovering over the valley last night. I followed it through those mountains, and it did land at Area 51. But as for it being extraterrestrial," Seldin takes a breath, "the alloy isn't from around here. Of that much I'm certain." "Then it's definitely an alien," Almir exclaims, but Seldin shakes his head. "I don't think so," he comments. "Then what was it?" Simon asks. "I think it's a reproduction, some sort of experimental craft, but the energy was weird. I had a hard time sensing past the hull. I couldn't tell what was inside," Seldin says. Jasra shakes her head.
"Well, there had to be a pilot. How else?"
"Remote," Simon answers, his face blank and his eyes casting a downward gaze. "I'd like to see that craft." "I second that," Seldin replies.
"Me too,"
Leon adds. "So you said you had a look around. What's the best angle of attack?"